Hello everyone, welcome to the LSI Watchalong for the Miami qualifying session for the Grand Prix format, where we will see the grid be set for the race tomorrow, the Sunday Grand Prix, the classic one, as we all truly do love, and which never goes anywhere or is replaced by a sprint. Currently, a few drivers already set their lap times. I say that, set their kind of first runs. It's Doohan, who's currently top of the times at 28.2. Now, we're going to go and double check the sprint qualifying lap times. The fastest time was a 26.4 from Kimi Antonelli, of course, the youngest pole sitter of any format. Now, Sebastian Vettel is still the youngest pole sitter for a Grand Prix at 21 years old, 2 months and 11 days. Kimi Antonelli can still break that today. It'll be a tough ask to do it again. There will have been lots of changes to the car, lots of setup changes since the sprint race, because you are allowed to do that ready for qualifying. So the pace of the cars may be different. More teams will have dialed in their cars a little bit more. Some teams will have maybe had a few issues. We got some slick tyre running from many cars late on in the sprint, which is going to give them a very good idea for qualifying, of course. And we'll see how it goes. But currently, it is Max Verstappen crossing the line to go to the top of the times, as we expect, 2.5 tenths ahead of Albon. Alonso's got a pretty decent lap in the early stages, considering track position relative to the Williams and relative to Hamilton. Hamilton, despite going purple in the final sector, is not able to beat Alonso's fastest time. Piastri beats everyone. Of all, it's Lando Norris who rounds the final corner to get their first lap in purple in that middle sector, but only P3 in the end, behind Max Verstappen. Max having terrible luck in the sprint race, but really making it work incredibly well in qualifying, and is going to try and get the job done. Once again, now we come to the second half of the day with more Formula One action for you. Can they get a good result tomorrow? They definitely deserve it after the bad luck they've had today. George Russell comes around the final corner to try and see, actually go into the pit lane. They're going to try and see if they can get themselves dialed in and ready to go. They had some problems in qualifying, and they managed to seem to kind of figure it out in the wet conditions. Whether they figured it out in the dry conditions today, I don't know. We'll see what the setup changes will be. And then, of course, we've got a few cars that will have more setup changes based on race pace, and it could change things a little bit further. But we will see how that one goes tomorrow. For now, we've got to focus on the outright pace. George Russell leaves the pit lane immediately after getting some fresh tyres on. 11 minutes on the clock, so still plenty of time, but going for a bit more of an aggressive run plan to try and get them some comfort and kind of learn the car and the setup ready for the race on Sunday. Now, our last Grand Prix race pole sitter was Max Verstappen for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. A brilliant lap to beat the McLarens from the Dutchman. They've got to try and do it all again. They've beaten one McLaren so far. They've still got to get ahead of the Aussie, the championship leader, whose championship lead now goes to 9 points after the sprint race, where Lando Norris managed to gain one extra point and win the sprint in Miami in very dramatic fashion, with the safety car being brought out at the perfect time for the Brit. Now, Lando Norris, of course, taking their first ever victory in Formula One, this time last season for the Miami Grand Prix. They're going to try and do it again, but they've got to keep composed. I don't know if they're going to get the same luck as they did get in the sprint race, of course. It's very, very unique for that to happen. Sprint qualifying, we saw Lando Norris P3 behind Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli with that phenomenal lap from the youngest ever pole sitter in the Mercedes car. As I said, now setup changes will have been made. All the cars will have been dialed in a bit more, or dialed out if they go the wrong direction with the philosophy of the setup. And we could see the order be mixed up completely. Currently, Russell, Antonelli on outlaps haven't set a single time just yet and are at the back, along with the Racing Bulls. Hadjar going green in the first sector, though, looking to try and set their first lap of the session. Stroll going green. It's also Gasly as well. Lance Stroll going for an improvement. It's purple in the first sector for Kimi Antonelli, so that Mercedes is still looking very quick. There's Hadjar across the line to P2 ahead of Verstappen by a fair distance as well, splitting in between Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen. It's both pit out situations here for the McLarens, and everybody is currently out on track. We see Charles Leclerc get their car repaired and ready for the session after they're off on the reconnaissance lap before the formation lap before the sprint. And of course, they did not start that one. A really, really, really treacherous condition that caused the accident. Really unfortunate for them. Antonelli runs the final corner. Purple in the first, green in the middle. Where will they end up? Will they go to the top? It's Carlos Sainz who goes to the top. And so it is the Mercedes expected to take that position immediately, and they do so. Is Lando Norris to P5? Sorry, Bortoletto to P5. So yeah. Brilliant stuff there from Antonelli. Not that far away, though, from Carlos Sainz, who goes purple in the second and third sector. So there's probably more lap time to be gained by everyone. 7 minutes on the clock. George Russell looking to try and do something with their car. Up to P7. Still having some struggles around this circuit with the car. Not enjoying the situation, whereas their teammate is having an absolute whale of a time, and I believe it's the first time that Antonelli's actually raced at this circuit. I don't believe they run F2 or didn't run F2 here last year. I may be wrong. Sonoda scoring a point, I believe, maybe in the sprint. I'll double check that in a second. Across the line they go, and that's to P9. That is just ahead of their teammate. Max Verstappen, though, is going purple. That's Leclerc to P9, but behind Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoletto. The Salmons are finding some good pace here. The Ferraris may have gone the wrong way in the direction of the setup. Verstappen, as fast as ever, is about to enter the third sector, and we'll see really what they're doing with this lap relative to the rest of the field. The middle sector, is it going to be green? It is, but it's going to be 3 tenths ahead of Antonelli. A huge advantage right there, and it should be a comfortable effort to get into the next part of qualifying. That being said, we've still got 5 minutes to go. And then Max Verstappen setting that lap, of course, getting the job done, up to P1. Apparently had a bit of wheel spin towards the final stages, so that's where they've lost that lap time, because they were effectively 3 tenths ahead. I say that, 3 tenths ahead of Antonelli. They still lost some lap time at Piastri, as pretty soon after sets another competitive lap. Not quite close enough to the Dutchman, who could be on cue to get another pole position. That would be a brilliant effort, wouldn't it? It's Lewis Hamilton having some problems into turn 17. And locking up the tyre. Anyway, sorry for that. Yeah, locking up the tyre for Hamilton. Not understanding what's going on with this car. Still managing to get P3 in the sprint with a brilliant strategy call, which is not really what you've seen from Ferrari in the last few years. They've definitely picked it up since 2024. Well, I say since 2023, because in 2024 they did make some good changes and started making some progress, and they continue to do that. It's just whether it's going to work out for them in qualifying. Welcome to the final 3 minutes of the session. Welcome to the final laps. Gasly, Stroll on their way out. Behrman last at the moment once again in qualifying, with it all to do to try and get that car into a place where it really should be, because the race pace of the Haas seems to be a lot better, and you can only really benefit if you get yourself in a good grid spot beforehand. Now it's Max Verstappen in the pit lane. It's Carlos Sainz in the pit lane, followed by Hülkenberg and Tsunoda, Hamilton and Ocon. They have some time to go out again. Hülkenberg is on their way to go one more time, but they're not giving themselves an easy chance. George Russell, currently P9, going quickly. A little bit of traffic of the cars around them, but they do continue. I say George Russell. Yes, it is George Russell. I'm trying to find them out on the circuit, but they're not on the timing screen at the moment. Even though I can clearly see them out on track, for some reason they've disappeared once again. So George Russell having more issues with their car and the transponder. But okay, they're going around the circuit. I'm going to trust that they are still on the circuit, and we'll see what lap time they can do, as they would effectively be just ahead of Alex Albon on circuit. Into turn 17 goes George Russell, and at the final corner it's Behrman who goes into second sector. Is down on the pole time, of course, but is going green. There's George Russell across the line, and that is to P3 for the Brit, ahead of his teammate for now, Antonelli. Are they going to be going again? I'm not entirely sure. I think they've just done a fairly reasonable lap. Oliver Behrman to P19. And that Haas is not having a whale of a time in qualifying at all. In fact, the complete opposite. An absolute slug in the qualifying session compared to where it used to be back in 2023, a qualifying master, and then just completely dropped off in the race. It's the opposite way round now. Charles Leclerc to P9. That Ferrari really not working out. Bortoleto, though, has made that a really nice quality lap. Gasly struggles. They're on the drop zone despite improving. That is their final lap time done. Hamilton is looking to try and knock them out of the session, but there's also Lance Stroll and Alonso improving. Alonso got into Q3 for the sprint session. Will it happen again? Hadjar to P6, improving as well. Brilliant stuff there from the Frenchman. Will we see Gasly safe? It's Lance Stroll who goes to P18, demotes Oliver Behrman down to last place again. For the second time in Grand Prix format, it will be Oliver Bearman this season, starting in last place. Hamilton enters the first sector. It's a purple middle sector for Alex Albon. Hamilton goes green and is currently really pretty quick, 1/10 ahead. I don't know of who that would be, if that's Verstappen. But yeah, looking pretty quick in that first sector and quite comfortable. So a 28.7 is very, very nice indeed. Faster than Norris's first sector, so yeah, maybe currently on cue to be ahead of Verstappen on the timings. Antonelli went to set a purple second and third sector. Alex Albon's lap time is still the purple middle sector of the P5. That's Lando Norris to P2. Hamilton rounds the final corner to try and get themselves into the second stage of qualifying. Will he be able to do it across the line? And they will do so. P8 for Lewis Hamilton. He's going to be safe. Hulkenberg's in the drop zone as Tsunoda goes to P9. Hulkenberg is out of the drop zone. And now it's Ocon who is at risk here in qualifying. But it's all over. It is all over. And qualifying will be done. We will lose Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, and Oliver Bearman. Jack Doohan out-qualifies his teammate for the first time in Formula 1 and will be P13, making them way into Q2. Jack Doohan has really changed their tune after the disaster in qualifying on Friday for the sprint qualifying. Lando Norris getting all sideways over the curbs in the Mickey Mouse section. That's where they probably lost out that little bit of time, but they were still pretty quick regardless. It's Max Verstappen who tops Q1, goes P1, and that is a 26.8 lap time right there, and that sprint quali a 26.4. So we have less than 4/10 to really try and gain. I say less than 4/10, about 4/10 to try and gain, more or less, very marginal. And then we will be matching, if not beating, the sprint qualifying pole time set by Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli, P6 behind George Russell, who is getting dialed in. I'll tell you what though, that Williams absolutely smashing it at the moment, doing a really good job, considering where they were those years ago and last year as well. A really big jump with the regulations quite possibly making some changes in that. Whether they'll be able to continue this form into the new regulation change of 26 under James Vowles, that is a question that we remain to have answered. That's the same for all teams as well. But also, on the note of a good performance, Gabriel Bortoleto into Q2, his teammate P16. P11 for Bortoleto, finding some positivity in this season since kind of the beginning. They had some really kind of down moments throughout the season so far. So it's good to see them getting some good momentum. It's Fernando Alonso who doesn't make it into the second part of qualifying as he did on Friday, and they sit behind. The questions will have to be asked for Pierre Gasly and his crew, because that car was capable of more, as you can see, with Jack Doohan getting that job done. Half a second away from Max Verstappen, and I'll tell you what, looking at the gaps, it's 6/10 in it. 6/10 and you're out of qualifying. That is how competitive the F125 season is right now. We knew it was going to be close, and it's definitely delivering. And it's only going to get quicker, or sorry, closer throughout the season. So I'll tell you, I can't wait. I can't wait to see how this one goes. We're waiting for the confirmation to go once again. In qualifying 2, it's Pierre Gasly, who had problems with traffic. That's what caused them to drop out, I assume, of the qualifying session. Gasly complaining about the traffic, but shown that they really didn't have the pace throughout the lap. So whether they would have had traffic in the first sector or not, they may have not got themselves into Q2 regardless. Hulkenberg locking up into the final corner and going completely deep. Applies the DRS up to the line, but nothing you can do about that one. The cars are queuing up at the exit of the pit lane. It's Yuki Tsunoda and Max Verstappen who will be going out first. Those Red Bull cars always look good. The green flag is going to be looking very good to the drivers. Max Verstappen waiting for the light to turn green from red so they can get going. And Dad Verstappen is going to try and put it on pole position for the second Grand Prix in a row. "15 minutes on the clock compared to 18 from Q1. Q2 will be a bit more manic. You've got less cars on the grid, however, so you should have less traffic. That is the trade-off that you get." Max Verstappen is now out on track as we get the green flag to go racing. To go race pace, not race pace, qualifying pace. Absolutely maximum attack. We will get the immediate view of what Yuki Tsunoda can do relative to their teammate as they create a gap to one another, and we'll get some clean running. Esteban Ocon follows closely behind. Then it's Charles Leclerc, Bortolesso and Carlos Sainz. The two Williams will be fighting each other pretty hard to get into this Q3 session, as they have been doing all season long, effectively. I should say really more the kind of more recent races, as Carlos Sainz did score points in Saudi Arabia, but they've had a few difficult races. Bahrain, a retirement. The sprint race earlier on today, a retirement as well. They get a second opportunity, as does everyone, a second lease of life to really give it everything. Now you've got that data, that feeling of the car. Still a little bit more hectic compared to a normal Grand Prix weekend. You have to get it dialed in. Max Verstappen comes through the final corner to start their first lap of Q2. Piastri and Norris leave the pit lane. They shouldn't get any traffic troubles, and it should be communicated between the drivers ahead of them. But they aren't in an optimal position, I'll tell you that. Max Verstappen on the exit of turn 1. Lando Norris moves out nicely. May have been a bit of a visual distraction, but they should be good to go. Through turn 3. And Piastri moves out the way nicely. And then there's a massive gap to Albon ahead. So I don't think they're going to have any problems with anyone. Tsunoda approaches the McLarens as well, and is going to hope to not be affected by Lando Norris, who's going to sit on the inside line and hopefully move out the way of the Japanese driver's lap. Verstappen into turn 11, purple at the moment, and we see a 28.345 versus a 28.702 from Yuki Tsunoda. Those two sectors are an absolute world of difference. Has Tsunoda backed off from their lap because of maybe some sort of impeding moment from Lando Norris? I don't know, but that is a huge gap, a huge difference. Yuki Tsunoda will go through into the second sector. 33.4 versus a 33.3. So that's a bit more like it. They haven't backed off their lap, but just that first sector, that gap is huge. I don't know what's happened. It must have been a mistake, but they've tried to get the lap done anyway for safety. Verstappen crosses the line. P1 have as course as they are the first one to set a lap. It's Yuki Tsunoda across the line as well to P2. Half a second away from their teammate. They keep it nice and close in the final sector. They bring it back a little bit. It's Esteban Ocon to P3, half a second as well. Very close to the back of Yuki Tsunoda, about half a tenth. There's Charles Leclerc to P2, not having the smoothest of rides compared to their teammates so far in this qualifying session, as Hamilton had a bit more of a competitive session, but now Charles Leclerc seems to be figuring it out a little bit better. Bortoleto to P4 ahead of Esteban Ocon, as the Haas just doesn't seem to have it so much in the qualifying pace. That Sauber can sometimes pull something out magical. Ten minutes to go in Q2. It's Liam Lawson across the line to go P8, ahead of Lando Norris, who hasn't set a lap time. Last of the runners. Purple middle sector for Oscar Piastri, and a massive amount faster than their teammate. The purple sector is immediately beaten by Lando Norris by a smaller margin, so Piastri still on cue to go a fair bit quicker compared to Lando. There is Oscar across the line, P1 for the Aussie, 3.5 tenths. Lando Norris rounds the final corner as well to come across the line. P2, despite a huge difference in that first sector, they were faster than their teammate in the final sector by a little bit more, but still 2.5 tenths effectively away from Oscar Piastri. A mighty first sector from Piastri, maybe picking up the pace a little bit earlier in the session than Lando has. That's Antonelli to P3. That's 3.5 tenths almost from the current top time. That's your pole sitter from the sprint race qualifying yesterday. Currently the order is Piastri, Norris, Antonelli, Verstappen, Albon, Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda and Bortoleto. We've got Russell, Ocon, Doohan, Lawson and Isaac Hadjar in P15, not setting a lap, the only one to do so. Sorry for the delay. Trying to get everything up back on the screen. And there you go. Contact to the wall with one of the McLarens there. But nothing too much to worry about. Seems all good compared to some of the moments of contact we've had with the wall throughout the event. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Oliver Behrman, all making contact. I believe it was Gasly in qualifying yesterday to also have an issue with the wall, but it wasn't quite so catastrophic. More of an issue for lap time rather than anything else. everyone in at the moment. No cars out on track as we see Piastri leading the way. Then it's Liam Lawson 1.5 seconds away. So we're actually a little bit less close together compared to where we were in Q1. Either showing that it's a little bit more tricky and rushed in Q2 for the Racing Bull, or the McLarens are really dialing up and showing what they can do now it gets important. I'm sure Lewis Hamilton's got a bit more confidence in the car, although since Leclerc's found the pace to catch up to their teammate and give it another shot, currently beating them by a small margin. What will that get to by the time the end of the session is up? Still, cars waiting in the pit lane. It's 5 minutes on the clock of Q2. Max Verstappen looks to try and take the 3rd pole position of the season, the 2nd in a row. Oscar Piastri looking to take another, as they did in China. That was a sprint race event. This is the other one, the next one in the calendar. And all the cars rush out with 5 minutes to go. A manic traffic jam all the way. So we see the cars try and squabble. Those that get released a little bit later try and bleed their way into the traffic, but they have to allow the other cars to pass. You can't just slowly put your nose in, otherwise you'll end up crashing, as we saw with Antonelli and Max Verstappen, although that was a bit of a different scenario. A very different scenario. Yuki Tsunoda will go first again. Now, they're going to try and get a safer lap in to try and make it work for them. That seems to be what they've been following most weekends in the last few Grand Prix in the Red Bull, effectively. But they do lose out on that peak track evolution, and it really does hurt their lap time, and it causes them to drop back a little bit more than we would probably hope. So Yuki Tsunoda has got to dig deep, otherwise they're going to be out again. They were P18 in qualifying for the sprint, and that was due to a few issues here and there. I think they were impeded, so it's not really fully on them. But now they get a second opportunity to try and make it work, and hopefully for their sake they do not get impeded again. Everyone but Doohan and Lawson are out on track, followed by also Albon and Piastri also in the pit lane. Will Piastri stay in the pit lane, or are they going to go out last minute? They stayed in the pit lane back in Jeddah. They didn't get there in the end to that pole time. I think that was in Q2 or 3 where they were really feeling that they were quite safe, and it worked out nicely. Yuki Tsunoda has begun their lap. Into the first corner they go. And we'll watch the sector times on the screen light up. Currently P9. 8 tenths away from Oscar Piastri. About 4 tenths away from their teammate. Losing most of their time in the first sector. That's what we saw earlier on. Yuki Tsunoda into the first sector, into the second sector now. 28.6. Much better. Much better compared to what they did previously. But still 3 tenths away from what Max Verstappen did. A 28.3 earlier on, I believe it was. Unless it was a 28.5. But still, it's better. Not really where you want to be relative to your teammate. How will they be able to perform in the middle and third sector? Well, the thing is, we've seen a few drivers go significantly quicker in that first sector, but not go quicker in the second and third. So maybe there's some sort of setup trade-off between a few drivers. Once again, green in the middle sector there for Yuki Tsunoda. going for their final run in qualifying, heading into the final complex of corners, and then they will exit, trying to keep it smooth on the traction. Esteban Ocon is going to follow on as well. They don't go faster than their best in the first sector, but they do beat it in that middle. There's Yuki Tsunoda crossing the line, and that's a P8, only P8 for Yuki Tsunoda, not improving in that final sector. That's a big risk. It's Esteban Ocon who goes to P9, does not knock down Yuki Tsunoda, gets ever so close though. The Japanese driver, very lucky for the minute, but we've got the two racing bulls have definitely got a lot more to push with. We've got Russell in the drop zone right now, and Hamilton, who's probably going to start pushing and possibly push one of these two down. Tsunoda, Ocon out. Hadjar, P10, does not get ahead of Ocon or Tsunoda. They could be safe. Absolutely extraordinary. Hadjar, a brilliant sprint qualifying, is not really finding it too well in the second part of qualifying for the Grand Prix format. George Russell in the middle sector, coming into the third and final sector. Jack Doohan as well following along to try and get this done. Currently Lawson, Doohan, Russell all in the drop zone, not setting really making it work so far. They've got a lot of pressure on them. Bortoletto is currently trying, or I was going to say trying to start a lap. They've run out of time and they've not had a good first sector. So that is it for Gabriel Bortoletto, who could find themselves in P15 if all the cars behind them do improve. George Russell, P13 in the drop zone, across the line to P3. A brilliant lap there. 3 tenths away from Piastri's time, who's in the pit lane still, with the confidence that that is enough. Jack Doohan, the Sol Alpine, goes across the line but does not get there in the end. Improves nicely but not enough to get an extra position. It's going to be Liam Lawson who stays 15th. Staying 15th is Liam Lawson. Jack Doohan staying 14th. It's Bortoletto who has managed to hold on to a 13th place. It's Lewis Hamilton who has not improved and will be knocked out in Q2 from a brilliant performance in the sprint race with a brilliant strategy. Now down and out. P12, Hadjar P11, just missing out by a few hundredths of a second. It's Ocon who is safely through. And Tsunoda is going to have to count themselves a little bit lucky there. Hamilton locking up at the final complex of corners into turn 17. A common place to make a mistake throughout the weekend so far we've seen. And, yep, a crucial moment there has really hindered their chances for the Grand Prix. Doesn't seem to be a half-bad race car, at least from what we've seen so far this weekend. And you're not going to get to see it be exploited to its fullest from Hamilton, and Leclerc will have to show that instead. Well, I'll tell you what, Leclerc or Hamilton will still get a very good show of that car. It's not like he's out of the whole Grand Prix weekend. They'll still be starting P12, which is brilliant, because they're not too far away from the points, but it does give Ocon a fantastic opportunity to try and score points and have that advantage. Hadjar starts ahead of his hero. Despite being knocked out in Q2, and not where they want to be, they still managed to qualify ahead of Hamilton, which is definitely going to be a good feeling. And they've also managed to qualify fairly nicely in front of their teammate Liam Lawson, who is about 4 tenths behind and almost 2 tenths behind Jack Doohan. So Lawson really having a hard time in that car, struggling a fair bit. Q2 is done. We get ready for Q3. A few minutes wait and we'll be going once again for the final stages of qualifying. 10 cars out on track, less traffic, less time, however, 12 minutes instead of 15 or 18. So a little bit more to think about, a little bit more to get done, but still, outright pace, everyone dialing it into the maximum. A few mistakes could be made by a few drivers, but it's where it's all about. As David Coulthard has said on many occasions, qualifying is where the drivers make their money. That's what they're paid for, the outright pace. Thank you very much to those that have joined us for the session today. We do appreciate it. Of course, we have covered the sprint qualifying, sprint race, and current qualifying session. We will not be doing a watch along for the Formula 1 Grand Prix as planned yet. Maybe that could change, but for now, nothing will change. And we will wait for the next session, the final minutes of the watch-alongs for LSI. Do join in, and I'll give you an update. We've got Piastri, who's gone fastest in the second part of qualifying. We've seen Behrman qualify last once again, the second time this weekend, and the second time in the Grand Prix format since Bahrain. It's Lance Stroll, who was P19, Gasly being impeded and also having a pretty terrible lap in P18. It's Fernando Alonso, who wasn't able to do the same thing as they did in the sprint qualifying to get themselves into Q3. They get knocked out in Q1, P17. It's Hulkenberg in P16, who was beaten by his teammate Bortoleto, P13. Before that, though, it's Liam Lawson, then Jack Doohan in P14. Then we've got Bortoleto. Then we've got Hamilton, who was shockingly knocked out right there with a terrible lockup. And very small margins in qualifying means that he is out. Hadjar followed as well. But in to the final stages of qualifying, it is Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, Antonelli, Russell, Norris and Piastri. The top two teams follow each other nicely, follow their teammates nicely. Very even, very satisfying to look at. Verstappen and Tsunoda, they are still in this qualifying session, but they have a little bit more of a gap between them. Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon currently really exploiting that Williams very nicely. The cars are waiting for the green flag, or at least get ready to go and sit at the end of the pit lane to give themselves the best chance for that track position for these final moments. Will we see Yuki Tsunoda once again be one of the first to set a lap time here in the session to try and give them that safety margin that they've been looking for? It still seems to hurt them in the outright pace. It's, I believe, Charles Leclerc to go out first on track, as the cars do reach the end of the pit lane. No, it's the Haas of Esteban Ocon. Yuki Tsunoda is then second, so fairly close to the front of the field. Charles Leclerc P3. The clouds are grey. The rain isn't set to fall. The humidity is lower than it was before. 65% compared to we had about 79 earlier on with the wet conditions. An absolutely brilliant race. Make sure you go and watch the highlights or a live replay if you have it. It was one to watch for sure. It was Lando Norris who took the victory. Spoiled it there for you. But I'm sure if you're watching this now, you would have probably already found out who took it anyway. They're going to try and go for pole position to give themselves the best chance at taking another victory here in Miami, this time for a second Grand Prix victory. Yuki Tsunoda is going to attempt to try and get as close as they can to their teammate. Can they finally dial it in, or are they going to see another decent-sized gap? Esteban Ocon is going to start their final lap, or not final lap, but they're probably one of their penultimate, if not third to final lap of the session, but their first lap of Q2. They're about to start their final session of the weekend before they get to the race on Sunday. Will it be a P10 for Esteban Ocon, as they were almost knocked out into Q2 by the tiniest of margins? They find themselves ahead of Isaac Hadjar. But we'll see them go through the S section at the beginning of the circuit. You'll go past the marina and you'll hit the sector line to see whether you're going faster, slower, or pretty much bang average on your lap times. There's Esteban Ocon. A 28.9. Not ideal, but it's a banker lap. It's a banker lap for sure. A 28.6. Yuki Tsunoda getting fairly close to what they did in Q2, but still nowhere near their teammate Max Verstappen. 28.7. Quite competitive from Charles Leclerc, but still, once again, nowhere near where you need to be if you want to try and beat a front runner. A 0.2 there from Max Verstappen, who's dialed it in even further. Absolutely miles away from Yuki Tsunoda in that first sector. Purple sector, of course, set by Esteban Ocon, but that's going to be set to be beaten by Yuki Tsunoda. But Yuki did not beat that one and goes for a 0.8 sector time in sector 2, which is huge. Absolutely massive margin. So currently Yuki Tsunoda is really down on their time, might even go straight back into the pit lane. Esteban Ocon sets the fastest time. Yuki Tsunoda is going to stay out on track and get the lap done. They will be behind Esteban Ocon by 2.5 tenths. Yuki Tsunoda in a Red Bull, whereas teammates going fastest right now in every sector, has just qualified behind Esteban Ocon, who was almost knocked out into Q2. And Verstappen is 9 tenths faster than Esteban Ocon, 1.1 seconds faster than their teammate. Really not gelling well is Yuki Tsunoda. Still getting themselves into Q3, but really not gelling well with the car so far. They've got more time. They've got 7 minutes on the clock, pretty much 8. Oscar Piastri not able to beat the might of Verstappen. Absolutely incredible. There is Norris, who also is not able to get there. The top 3, incredibly close, however. Brilliant stuff, sharing fastest sectors. Fastest in Sector 1 for Verstappen, Lando Norris faster in Sector 2, and then fastest for Piastri in Sector 3. And they make the top 3. That's Albon just ahead of Carlos Sainz's teammate, half a tenth in front. Antonelli beats the 2. And we see George Russell follow on as well to try and set an improvement lap, or set their first lap I should say, but not able to get ahead of their teammate, and is incredibly close in between the Williams cars, but half a second away almost from his teammate. That is a huge gap that you really don't want to see. Antonelli despite setting a good lap compared to his teammate, is still 2.5 tenths. The pole man from the sprint yesterday, qualifying session I should say, is all over the place. That's Lando Norris locking up into turn 17. Not really getting that punished on the kind of order, which is fortunate for him, but it definitely shows the rest of the field, that there is a lot more pace in the Papaya car, and they should not be doubted. It's going to be very scary to see that lap time go through. Tsunoda. Max Verstappen gets rushed into the pit lane to get prepared for their final lap of the session. If you're in the pit lane at this stage, you're probably not going to go for 2 laps. So 6 minutes on the clock. The McLarens are in too. Everyone will be doing the same things. Nice. Oscar Piastri just completely launching it over the curbs in the Mickey Mouse section. Turn 14 and 15. Basically flying, getting air. I believe they may have had all 4 wheels off the circuit, which is pretty crazy and must have felt like a bit of a bump in the backside, which is not going to be comfortable. But if it's faster, then these drivers have no problem doing it. Four minutes to go. They'll be waiting for the optimal time to go out. A balance of track evolution, a balance of track position to get the job done. Verstappen currently tops the times by a tiny margin, although we do know that Lando Norris made a big mistake on their most recent run. So that McLaren has a big chance of going faster once again. And Lando Norris is looking to try and make their Miami legacy. They're trying to be the one that owns the marina. Absolutely incredible if they can make it their circuit. So far they've owned it pretty well. Maybe a bit of fortune has come about, but it's the way you have to play it. It was a strategic call to stay out for Lando Norris, and it worked. And it did work. They could have come in, but they decided not to. And they finished ahead. But now we've got to focus on these laps. 3.5 minutes to go. Pit out for Ocon, Tsunoda and Leclerc. Also for the champion, Max Verstappen. Tsunoda and Verstappen will lead the way. Again, Tsunoda going earlier than anyone in this session. Then we've got Ocon, Leclerc, Norris, and we see the Mercedes also on their way out onto the track. Piastri will follow behind their teammate to compete for pole position against Verstappen. It's not going to be easy. The way they're able to dial in that car and really find the window to work with that other drivers have not been able to do is mightily impressive. But now they've got to keep it clean. That's what lost them. Quite possibly a combination of luck for Lando Norris, but also that mistake for Max Verstappen in Miami. And now they come back in the following year to try and give it another chance. Yuki Tsunoda rounds the final corner to begin the final laps of the session for everyone here in qualifying. Everyone is out on track now, all clean, all ready to go. This is the moment that they've been waiting for to get the cars to maximum attack. It's Yuki Tsunoda through the first corner, and we'll watch on to see what they can do on the sector line. Verstappen crosses the line second, and it's Ocon who will go third. Yuki Tsunoda comes through the S's, complex, turns 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. And on the exit of 8, we will see them cross that sector line and show what lap time they can do. Let's watch and see what's it going to be for Yuki Tsunoda in the first sector. A 0.5. It's better again. It's better again, but it's still very far away from their teammate, who we'll see go again through the sector line. A 0.2, faster than anyone. 3 tenths away from their teammate. Absolutely incredible. A 28.6 there for Esteban Ocon. Would Ocon be able to out-qualify Yuki Tsunoda here? A 0.6 there for Leclerc. So Tsunoda's managed to beat the cars around him for now, but they've still got pressure on them. 33.4 in the middle sector. Max Verstappen, what's it going to be for the Dutchman as they cross the sector line as well to go into the final sector of the lap here? 33.0. Huge gaps throughout the lap. 4 tenths in it. I do not believe it. Max Verstappen is currently on cue to improve and try and defend their current pole time. It's Yuki Tsunoda who goes to P5, 4.5 tenths away, but Max Verstappen is going to make that gap even bigger. They cross the line to take provisional pole position in Miami to almost 3 tenths from Lando Norris's current time, but there are cars going fairly quickly. It's not an improvement for Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri in the first sector. In fact, they're 2 tenths slower than Max Verstappen, but they've gone nice and quick in that second sector. It's the final sector, though. They've got to find another tenth and a bit if they do want to try and have a go at pole position. Lando Norris is going to cross the line for the final time here in qualifying. What's it going to be? Oh, and he's not done enough. He's not done enough by just over 0.5 tenth of a second. Oscar Piastri is going to follow suit as well to try and make it work, but it's not looking so good. Oscar Piastri is out-qualified by his teammate Lando Norris. 1 tenth in it between them two, but Max Verstappen has a very good chance of getting pole. It's Antonelli who's going to try and compete. It's Carlos Sainz who beats them for now, but what will Antonelli do? They're going faster than the Spaniard by a fair bit. Albon also goes ahead, but here we go with Kimi Antonelli across the line to split the McLarens. They split the McLarens. What a lap there for Kimi Antonelli. A purple final sector for Piastri wasn't enough, and they drop behind. It's Russell who is once again out-qualified by their younger teammate, which is a brilliant effort. And we don't see an improvement from Charles Leclerc, Ocon or Tsunoda since they've already set their laps or they haven't been able to do anything with it. That's Max Verstappen on pole position for the second time in a row and a third time in 2025. Lando Norris in P2 and Kimi Antonelli in P3. Another brilliant performance in Miami for Kimi Antonelli. They don't quite start on the front row of the grid, but they do start far up and once again alongside Oscar Piastri for round 2 in turn 1 at a race start, which will be very interesting. Lando Norris, I think that was, going over the inside curb at turn 17. Possibly that is the reason, not possibly, that is the reason that they lost to pole position. The game is the game. The job has been done, and Max Verstappen is P1. Lovely stuff from Dad Verstappen, who's going to look at trying to take victory in Miami and get redemption from 12 months ago. They get out the car with a little bit of a celebration. They're happy to get that one done, and they can't wait for tomorrow. A lovely session there. And it's going to set it up nicely for the race tomorrow. I cannot wait for that one. It's going to be absolutely epic. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. It's been a pleasure. You've got Max Verstappen on pole position, Lando Norris in P2. We've got Antonelli, Piastri, Russell Sainz, Albon, Leclerc, Ocon and Tsunoda down in P10. Really, really tough there for Yuki Tsunoda. 7 tenths away from his teammate who goes pole position. And you're last in Q3. That's tough to take there for the Japanese driver. Really tough to take. Antonelli also has beaten his teammate as well. That's tough to take. Lando Norris has found some really nice momentum coming into the second half of the weekend. It's Carlos Sainz who's managing to find some good pace over their teammate. Once again, in that Williams, really getting dialed in. Leclerc beats his teammate by quite a margin in 2 separate sessions. Ocon to P9, whereas Behrman once again messing up qualifying, P20. That car should have some good race pace though, so I'm sure we're going to get to see that tomorrow in full effect. Thank you very much one more time, everybody. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next weekend for the F1.5 and F1 Championship for LSI, the Abu Dhabi finale. We'll see you next time for another watch along. Goodbye.